So we'll get started now. What I'd like to do is introduce to you and ask you to welcome our senior fellow here at the Dole Institute, Jennifer Schmidt. Jennifer?
Thank you, Bill, and we're very, very, very happy to have you back. Welcome and thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. I'm Jennifer Schmidt, Senior Fellow at the Dole Institute of Politics. Martha Washington sat in on talks about treaties with Indian nations. Abigail Adams pressed her husband to remember the ladies when making legislation. Edith Wilson was accused of running a petticoat government because she was so involved in affairs of state. Throughout history, First Ladies have had a great deal of influence on their president husbands. And today, the role of first spouse will likely grow and expand as a new era of men and women bring their own professional backgrounds, career skills, and political ambitions to the post. As we learned from Connie Schultz, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and wife of U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, when she spoke on this stage last September, these expectations are not confined to presidential wives. They face spouses at all levels of politics and at every level of the political spectrum. Joining us tonight to discuss her experience as a First Lady and using her keen insights to help us understand what roles first spouses play and the expectations they face is South Carolina First Lady Jenny Sanford. And I will tell you, we just finished having dinner with Mrs. Sanford, and you'll be glad you came. She is engaging, lovely, and extremely knowledgeable about politics, campaigns, and all aspects of the presidential race. So I think going to be an excellent program. Mrs. Sanford was born and raised in Winnetka, Illinois, and holds a bachelor's degree in finance from Georgetown University. She worked for the investment banking firm Lazard Frères in New York from 1984 through 1990, including serving as vice president in mergers and acquisitions. No small feat. The Sanfords then moved from New York to the Charleston area, where in 1994, Mrs. Sanford managed her husband Mark's successful campaign for Congress, the couple's first foray into the political arena. Mrs. Sanford also managed his winning gubernatorial campaign in 2002, assisted him daily in the State House during his first term as governor, and co-managed his successful re-election campaign in 2006. At the governor's mansion, Mrs. Sanford has completely reorganized the operations, resulting in significant savings to the taxpayers. In 2005, she launched the Healthy South Carolina Challenge, a results-based initiative designed to help South Carolinians quit smoking, eat healthier, and start exercising. She is currently active, serving on a variety of nonprofit boards and raising her four young sons. So please join me in welcoming Jenny Sanford. Does that work? I think.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your patience. Jenny, thank you so much for being here tonight. We've really enjoyed having you here so far. I'm going to back up and start and tell the story. How did you meet your husband?
We met actually when we were both working on Wall Street in New York, and I needed a ride somewhere, and he was a nice Southern gentleman and picked me up in his car, so he was a friend of a friend. But long story short, we met on Wall Street, and I always thought while I was working in New York that I was just getting New York out of my system before I moved back to the Midwest. I'm from Illinois. And he said, I don't go to Illinois. So it was made very clear from the beginning that if we became married or stayed together, that we would end up in the South. So,
Did you ever think when you were growing up that you would be First Lady of South Carolina?
no, never in a million years. And frankly, I tell people all the time, I don't know if any of you guys are sports fans, but we have 4 boys, and boys are sports fans. And never in a million years did I think not only would I be the First Lady of South Carolina, but that I would have kids who wear things that say Cox on them. And we have I mean, in Illinois, that's a bad word. So it just, I don't know, it's just the whole thing. Is sometimes I wake up and say, how did I get here? Living in the governor's mansion with 4 boys, 2 dogs, and a cat, and Cox on the hat just was never really part of my future. No, but we love it now, so it's okay. Yes, we're all big Gamecock fans. Yeah.
But students in the audience, be careful what you plan.
Yes,
it's a whole different journey. When I actually worked for Senator Dole's campaign in South Carolina, volunteering down there, and that was the favorite souvenir of everybody coming down with the Cox hats for the local team.
Yeah, we'll send you some if yours were. If yours not worn out, we can send you some new ones.
I think they're long gone. I'm sorry. Probably down in the archives with everything else, actually. What kind of political experience did you have? Did you ever want to be in politics, or did Mark want to be in politics?
He did not want to be in politics that I knew of. And no, I had never even volunteered on anybody's campaign. I was always a conservative businesswoman type. My business was my love and finance, but that it changed. Now I'm deeply into the political world. Although I'm still driven by financial issues and business issues, Mark is clearly driven by political issues.
Then you decided. What made you decide to move to South Carolina? Or what made you leave New York?
Mark wanted to start a real estate business. He was in the real estate business in New York and wanted to start a real estate business in South Carolina. So we moved down, and I left my job in New York to follow him. And, really kind of didn't really know what the future held, but soon found out.
Could you tell the story you told a little bit earlier tonight about running his first campaign, how you got involved in being the actual campaign manager, not just somebody who helps, but...
Well, I had worked on Wall Street for a number of years and was not working at the time. And we were renovating an old house that we bought after the hurricane, and we had our first child, and then we were building a new house and had our second child. And I was literally in the hospital and had just given birth to our second child, and we had a 15-month-old at home. So the first 2 were 15 months apart. And Mark in the hospital said to me, I think I'm going to run for Congress. And I said, like the U.S. Congress or the State House? And he said, the U.S. Congress. And I said, don't you want to start somewhere lower than that? And he said, no. And he was, long story short, he was in the real estate business and looking at different real estate deals and at the long-term economics of our country, and was nervous about the way our government was spending money. And he felt passionate about it and said that there was an open seat for Congress in our district, in our area. We lived on the coast of South Carolina. And he just said he wanted to do something about it. And if he lost, he said he was happy if he would be, he said he would be, his goal obviously was to win, but it was also to change the debate a little bit. And he said that if he didn't win, he would be okay with the notion of going back to the real estate business. And he told me that he wanted me to run his campaign because I was free. And I said, like, free, like I have nothing to do? Because I had these 2 babies. And I said, or free because don't cost you anything. And he said, well, both. So anyway, I said, well, I don't know anything about politics. And he said, well, you don't have to. I know what I'm about, and you're going to manage the business end of it. And so in essence, at dinner, I said, I told him I'll do it once, and don't ever come back to me after you lose. If you lose by just this much or this much, I don't care what. Don't come back and say we have to do it again, because I'll do it once and I'll give it my all. But and I did, and he won. And here you are. Now what do we do?
What made you decide to do it? And was it ideas? Was it politics? Was it loyalty to him? Was it?
It was totally loyalty to him.
Okay.
Yes. No. I mean,
in the hospital and really.
We're both conservative, but and there are certain issues that we maybe aren't exactly the same on. But the bigger difference is that we had an issue recently where he asked me my thoughts about it, and, I'm lying in the bed. I forgot what it was. And I said, what? And he just, what do you think about this? And I said, oh, I really am not driven by that. I mean, that's really the difference between us. We both are fairly similar on most of our beliefs, but, he can't go to sleep at night because he's got some issue that's just burning him about what was done right or wrong, and I just don't. I'm worried about, when are we going to go back to, earn money, or what about this investment, or what about that, or what about the kids, and we're just driven by different things. But basically our beliefs are very similar, and so there's no conflict there, which makes it easy. So even though I'm not driven by politics the way he is, I run the business end of his things, and he's the idea guy, and it's worked out fine. So I did it really out of love and respect for him.
That makes sense. And you ran the first campaign out of your house.
Yeah, the first campaign and then the first campaign for governor were both run out of our house.
So
it's free. There's a similar theme here in most everything that happens in our lives. My husband, for those of you that don't know, he's very known for pinching a penny. He's very frugal, and so free campaign space, free campaign advice, free everything is very big in his list.
But you don't know, she actually drove here. She did not fly from South Carolina. She was on the Greyhound bus that pulled up earlier. I'm joking. What was that hard to go home, though? I mean, was it hard to be all campaign all the time then?
Yes, it is actually. It does take a strain on a marriage because you can. There's pros and cons, and there are many couples that work together. And it's very similar. I think you have to come to an agreement about when you turn it off. And, we still have that. But I think that's true probably for any political spouse, because maybe there's some political spouses that don't talk issues. And maybe there's some that talk issues too much. I don't know. But you have to find that balance where you turn it off and you're a mom or you're just a wife or whatever. And that's a balance you have to strive to find, I guess, at any time.
What else do you guys talk about? Is there a great hobby that you have, that you share, that you cook dinner on Friday nights or something?
No, there's not. Kids would be our shared passion. 4 kids would be it. More often than not, especially since they're all boys. I'm like, okay, guess what this one did? And this is coming to you. This one's coming to you. But more often than not, we talk about kids. My husband really, he was raised on a farm, which is really where he learned his penny pinching. And it really is, it's not only heartfelt. His dad died of Lou Gehrig's disease when he was about 20 or 21, and they thought they'd lose the family farm. And long story short, they kept the family farm because of the way Mark managed it. And basically, if the barns or fences needed painting, they just came down. And that's a simplification, but they also got rid of cows and planted in trees and did some things that have made it today a very valuable farm. But it is a place where he and his family get together, and where it happens to be a wonderful place for 4 boys. So that tends to be where we relax, unwind, talk about anything, what should we plant, and we tend to it's not something I ever imagined that I would be doing at this time in my life, but we'll take the boys out and either teach them how to plow the fields, or teach them about the timber, or look for birds, or try and shoot a deer, or catch fish, or and most importantly, particularly now in our lives, you're away. There's nobody. You don't run into anybody. You're pretty much alone, which is key for keeping yourselves a family outside of the political world, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Away from the press, or away from the other influences or things people say, or him having to feel like he's, aware of, how he looks or what he's doing or what he's saying. It's very important as a family that we have time where it's just us and where you just really unwind, and that tends to be our shared interest.
How did your life change when he was elected to Congress?
When he was elected to Congress, it changed obviously because he physically moved to D.C. I stayed in Charleston with the kids, and then I had 2 more children born when he was gone. He served 6 years in the Congress. And both times he came home and the baby was induced, and then at the last one he was induced, the baby was induced in the morning, and he caught the 10 o'clock flight, a.m. So, it's a different kind of a world where, he's literally physically gone all week long. And then on the weekends, you're campaigning all the time. So he'd come home and we'd load the kids up. And they were little at that age, so they didn't mind parades or festivals or the things you do to really campaign these days. Today they question, do we have to go to that parade, or can I maybe go to my soccer game or whatever else it is? But so my life changed basically because he was gone physically, and I was home raising the kids and dealing with some political things at home. You're constantly doing things. I had a limit on what I could physically do with 4 little children at home. So I wasn't, as a congressional wife, you can stay somewhat under the radar. It's not as high profile as a governor's wife.
And then when he came home and said, how did he tell you he wanted to run for governor?
Well, he was self-term limited. So he's a fervent believer in term limits and doesn't take special interest money. So he self-limited himself to 3 terms. So I knew he was coming home at the end of 2000. And he didn't run for governor until the election in 2002. So he did not tell us right away that he was, and I don't think he, I don't think he knew. He came home, was very popular after being governor, went back to the real estate business, and was really just taking a break and, being with the family. And he was asked by a number of people to run. We had a sitting governor of the other party, and he was asked and kept looking into it and finally decided to run. So it was, by that time, it was more of a joint decision, I guess.
And how did he talk you into running that campaign?
He asked me to run it, and I said, no way. And I told him all the reasons why, the 4 sitting right there, the boys. And I said, it's a statewide, who in their right mind runs a state, what wife with 4 little kids, including a 2-year-old, runs a statewide campaign? Nobody that's very sane. So I stayed out of it, and he tried to kind of muddle through on his own, and he got a couple of people here and there. He didn't really hire anybody, but he had a couple of people that he thought he could maybe piece it together. And basically a number of months went by, and he basically asked very strongly for me to come and get involved. And by that time I could see that he really needed me, so I did get involved.
How do South Carolinians react to you officially running the campaign?
They didn't like it. Some people like it, many women like it. But in general it's a very conservative state. I'm a Yankee in a southern state. Really. To be honest, running as a Republican, Hillary is a kind of a bad name, so they would call me Hillary. Mark was running against 6 other people. That was bad. They tried to use it against him, that he had the wife running the campaign in the House, and that just was somehow bad. But that kind of goes with the territory in some respects.
Were they critical in the press then, or was it on the stump, or how were they?
At the end of the day, it didn't bother me a lick because he was running for governor, because he had certain ideas and things he believed in. And most people that liked him for those ideas and beliefs. The people that didn't like him because I was running his campaign really didn't like him, probably for other reasons. And they used me as the scapegoat, which is frankly the way politics works often. So it didn't really bother me. The press, so those kind of people tended to be allied with another candidate, whether it was another Republican candidate or whether it was a Democratic candidate. So would they use it in the press? Yes. Would the press write about it? Yes, because if somebody stokes that stuff, they write about it or they talk about it. That's the way pretty much the world works today. So yes, it was used, and he got a free campaign manager and they didn't. So I don't know whose loss that was.
I'm just particularly interested in that. I actually was criticized by a leader of the other party here in Kansas in writing as a political operative from my political experience. Mm-hmm. And one of my husband's, because of some of the issues he was taking, they went out after me in writing, and he just kind of shrug and go, "Oh, that's unfortunate."
Right.
They don't really know me, but that makes
I
sense.
think it's unfortunate in this day and age that they would criticize a woman for doing anything that shows that she's capable of being productive. It's a sad comment. It's particularly sad in the South that people do that, but it's a reality.
I think it happens everywhere.
Right.
But why would it be different asking you to run the campaign because he chose to marry you than hiring Joe Smith and paying him to run the campaign and he didn't marry him? Does that make sense? I've never understood that. I think there's a disconnect, in my opinion, between thinking that giving the first spouse or a spouse a specific role, this is what you're going to do, and now everybody knows about it, rather than suspecting, oh, gee, what kind of influence does she have? It's like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, there are a couple different things. I think that there are people who didn't like it just because I was a woman. There are people who didn't like it because I was the wife, and they thought that I would be the unelected somebody who would do all these crazy things behind his back, Somehow I'm this devious whatever, when I'm just making the trains run on time. There was some of that. There's still some, in most political circles, particularly in places like South Carolina, where we have a very strong good old boy system, there's still a club mentality within the legislature, but also the people that run campaigns, and the notion that a wife would not be one of the accepted campaign managers that are normally used in that state, and then that she would win, is just, it's bad news, because it means the other guys who backed the other candidates and made all this money in fees and then they lost, I think there's a lot of different levels on which people were critical, but
they lost.
Right.
So then when your husband was elected governor, you moved to the governor's mansion. What expectations do people have of you?
The expectations, I think, of a first lady are, they're different based on who holds the expectations. There's a certain subject of the population that still wants you to just host teas and you have to do everything the last first ladies did and the way it's always been done. And there are, I tell people when they come to see our governor's mansion, which is a very nice governor's mansion, that I tell people that there's a lot that comes with the house. Not only do you have to manage the finances of the house and the people that work at the house, and our house is open to the public, it's on tour. But you have to serve as a hostess for your husband if he has companies come in or legislators come in. But you also have this expectation, immediately the phone rings and there's all these people who, well, we've always had the such and such luncheon there. And then if you actually ask them, well, oh really, did the last first lady? Well, no, not her. Well, how about the one before that? Well, no, not her. Well, how about the one before that? Well, actually, she did. And so I was really good friends with her. And so then you say, well, okay. And to some extent, I was actually blessed because there was no money. The previous governor had spent all the money for the governor's mansion when we got there, and we still had a half a year left. And so that was interesting. So I turned it into a privilege. I said, well, you know what, because they knew that in the press that we had no money. So I said, well, who paid for that event when you had that with that first lady? And they said, well, they did. And I said, well, we don't have any money today. So, unless you want to raise the money, we might have to think differently. And amazing, and then I used that again with people that I did want to have events for. I'd say, I'll have the event for you, but can you pay? I mean, even if you come for the tea, can you pay $5 a person? Because we don't have any money. And surprisingly, there are no rules, which is the good thing. So if you're just a little bit, pay some attention, there's no rule that says the first lady has to do this, but there are a lot of expectations, mostly on the part of other people, about what has to be done. And there are certain things that you do have to do. There are certain functions that actually are traditional, that do go with it. But there are others that you can, cut out if you want to, if you're willing to take the flack, or that you can add if you want to, have other groups come to the mansion that maybe didn't have events there before. So the good news is, I tell people all the time, I wasn't elected, which is great. I was chosen by my husband, I guess, but I can't be fired. I don't get paid. There are no rules. So you can make, and I think this is probably pertinent for any first lady, you can do what you need to do, but with it comes a lot. A lot being the press, the public eye, the scrutiny, the knowledge that whatever it is you do, someone out there is going to take issue with it, and they're going to write about it. And so if you really want to do something, pay close attention to how you do it, and be willing to take the criticism from those papers or TV outlets or interest groups that don't like what you're doing, because there's always going to be someone that doesn't like what you're doing.
Has anybody been critical about you not being in banking any longer?
No. Or not to my face.
What do you think they do if you announced that you were going back?
My husband, actually. Because he loves me.
How do you get money?
He doesn't say it now, but like in these last couple of years, he'd say, oh my gosh, what am I doing making this? Sometimes politics can be very lonely, and you come home and you say, oh gosh, I'm just beating my head against the wall. And he said, and you could be out there making money. Or he could, but at the same time, he says, why don't you go back and make money, and maybe, I won't worry about all these things. But it's not the right time for me right now, because we do have a lot on our plate.
What do you think South Carolinians would do, though, if you walked out one day and you said, listen, I'm going to be working over here? Do you think they would be critical of that decision? I mean, nothing to do with your boys and raising children, but just the idea that you would be the one working in banking with your own.
I think there'd be some people that would be critical in general, but for the most part, actually, I think that it would be okay. Because I think, I mean, now they have a long enough history with me to know a couple of things. One, I did manage his campaigns. Two, I'm not driving policy for him. In other words, which is what I think they thought I would do behind the scenes. I think that was their great fear. But I'm not doing that. And we've been there long enough now that they know I'm not doing that. Now, some still suspect it, and they still think I'm this evil woman behind the curtain or something. But mostly that's just a small group, at the State House that doesn't like my husband anyway. So for the most part, women out there and people in the general public respect, I think, the fact that I have stood up and supported my husband. And that's actually a very traditional role, and there's really nothing wrong with that. And I think most people in general don't have a problem with that. So if I were to go out on my own in a specific independent banking kind of a venture, investment banking, or to run a company with my boys, I think there wouldn't be a problem with that. It depends on what the business was, though, because I think that you do open yourselves up to some conflict of interest, because there's so many things that come back to an interest that has something before the state or before some government agency, and I think that's where you have to be very careful, because you'd always have speculation, I think, about why is she doing it? Is there some angle? Is she doing something because she's going to make more money there, or she's got some secret contract somewhere? There's that kind of stuff that is always out there, and I think that's where you're always aware.
I've always found it interesting that with presidential first ladies anymore, some people love Laura Bush, and she actually has an approval rating consistently in the 80s, one of the highest approval ratings ever in the history of first ladies, but then there are others that are very critical of her. Because she does stay home with her kids and doesn't work outside the home anymore. But then you go to Hillary Clinton, and it was just the opposite. Some people. So we seem to be at a place of changing expectations. It seems almost that the women's movement is finally hitting political spousehood.
Right.
What we expect two distinct personalities in a marriage and almost any other profession. Once we get to politics, we now have. Everybody has their own views on what this person should be, regardless of who that person actually is.
Right.
Where do you think we're going with that, or do you see that too? Because you've met most of the spouses of the candidates running this year, and before the South Carolina primary. So what do you think?
I don't know where we're going, but I will say this in general. I think it's a tough time to be in public office, and that goes not just for the person in public office, but for their family. And that includes the spouse, but it includes the kids. Because I tell my children all the time, I say, you're not like just the average, whether, let's take my 15-year-old is driving right now, and I say, if you get stopped for speeding, it's going to be written about. If your friends get stopped for speeding, they're just experimenting with speeding, and their dad's going to be mad. I said, you are held to a different standard because of the family you're in, and that's not your fault, but that is the reality. Now, the flip side is when you offer for public service, when you offer to run for an office, when Mark, my husband, offered to run for office, I mean, the family is part of the package, and there's some certain assumption in it that the press and the public can tell you what they think you should be doing. I mean, that kind of comes with our mentality today. I don't know that means you need to succumb to what everybody says, but you need to be careful always about how you describe what you're doing. And more than that, I think, and this is something, again, we teach our children, you need to be confident that you know who you are. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're confident with who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, it doesn't really matter what the world thinks. It matters what you and the Lord think, and it matters, in other words, judge not lest you be judged. I'm not here to tell some other first lady what to do or what's best for her or her family or her kids. The Lord's in charge of deciding whether they lived correctly or not. And in our family, we just try to do the best we can every day and do what works for us, and that may not be what works for other families. Now, having said that, the demands of people in public office, particularly at a level like governor or president or vice president, the demands on your time are significant. And that alone would preclude me at this stage in my life from doing something otherwise. As much as I yearn right now, frankly, to have more of a life of my own, it's not the time for me because we have 4 children who really need parents. And Mark's time is much more committed than mine. And so the fact that I'm here tonight, he's home. So, we really do juggle as much as we can who's watching the farm. And, you only get one shot. I can't go back later on and say, gosh, I I wish those kids came at a different time. This is the time they're here. So this is the time that they are my one priority, and my husband. And so I balance that. I look at every first family, every political family, I guess, with that in mind, that they have to do what's right for them. And I don't think that the world should hold any first lady to a certain standard and judge upon them what's right for them. Although you can't keep people from thinking about what they think is right?
People seem to have opinions, but it just seems an interesting time that rather than a traditional, an idea that this is what this person's supposed to do, a very traditional role, a lot of people still hold that very strongly, but then people also hold the view that they should be a career person very strongly. There's no way to make everybody happy, to your point.
You can't make everybody happy.
There's no way, you just can't win in that situation. It seems like a very tough time to have a family in politics, as you've said. One thing that I found particularly interesting is that in this presidential campaign with Senator Clinton running for president, she says, my experience as First Lady was valuable experience that will help me be a competent president, and other people are taking shots at that, and there's become a debate about what kind of experience that is. What kind of experience do you think that is?
I think there's no question she gets experience as First Lady. Is it the kind that you should wear on your sleeve to make you qualified to be a president? I don't know, and I can't judge that. Frankly, she should be saying things like, I think my experience as First Lady coupled with my experience as a senator, that would be the more realistic, amalgamation of what her experience is. The experience as First Lady has broadened my life in many ways, some good, some bad, but I don't know that it's necessarily qualified me to be, and I'm not First Lady of the nation, but I don't know that it's qualified me to be an executive of a $5 billion company, and, let's look at South Carolina as a $5 billion state. But does it give me qualities that could help me if I had, for example, financial experience? Yes, it broadens who I am. It gives you a different dimension. It makes you think about, if you think about the things a First Lady juggles, she juggles her husband and his schedule. She juggles all the issues he has to deal with. She acts as a sounding board to him if she has that kind of a relationship with him. She has to deal with press and difficult issues of her own, whether they're personal or family issues like the Clintons had, or whether they're issues of tax policy or other things that people are irate about or people are picketing in front of her house about. There are issues you deal with, and whether they're my husband's issues or not, for example, if there are people picketing outside our house, you are compassionate toward those people, you understand what the issue is, you still have to deal with that issue. You're not on the line for the decision that's being made with that issue, and there is a big difference there. I think that's where the stretch is maybe in that respect. But there's no question that you have to learn to juggle and manage a household in many different functions and many different roles, all within the same persona. And that does probably set you apart from the average housewife, certainly.
Yeah.
And it adds certainly some things to your credentials. Does it rise to the level of preparing you for a major office? Yeah, I would think that might be a bit of a stretch.
Just seems like in that debate, one thing we're trying to figure out is what kind of relationship they had and what kind of relationship we expect husbands and wives to have.
Right.
And I'm not sure we can answer that.
I would think that, I think it's a very personal role. I think that no matter who you are, you're either a public person or you're shoved into the public light. I don't like to speak publicly, but there's a certain expectation that you will go speak, lots of places. Other spouses like to speak lots, and they'll speak all the time. Other spouses don't have young children at home, and they can do more philanthropic things. There are certain things that you're comfortable doing that you tend to gravitate toward, and that's the wonderful thing about a First Lady. There are no rules. You can make what works for you work. The flip side is there are things you don't want to do, but you still have to do. Lord knows there are lots of days when I don't want to be reading the paper or telling my kids what's in the paper about their dad. There are lots of things that you have to do that the wife of an executive of a corporation probably doesn't have to do. They're things that go with it. Yeah.
It's a different life.
Right.
It's a very different life. What would happen if, as in this state, we have a first gentleman, or as he likes to be called, a first dude? How are the expectations different? How would they be different in South Carolina?
We've never had a first gentleman or a first dude, and I suspect that would be a big thing for a small conservative southern state. But I suspect they do fine, just like the Yankee here has done fine. I mean,
I think they do fine. One thing that's been interesting to me about Judge Sebelius, he's a judge, is the last picture of the Easter egg hunt at our governor's mansion. The governor was there, and typically it's been the First Lady, and so it just is an interesting. I'm not sure we have in Kansas the same expectation for some of the ceremonial duties for him that we would have if he was of a different gender.
Right.
And I don't know if that would carry in South Carolina. I don't know if that would carry if we have, at some point I think we'll have a woman president, whether it's Hillary or somebody else. I know, but I think at some point we will, if we'll carry that forward.
It's funny, I look sometimes at, we moved from the coast of South Carolina to Columbia, 2 hours inland, and most of the traditions that come with the governor's mansion tend to be, and I suspect this is the same here and in most states, they tend to be things that somebody started 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We do an Easter egg hunt, for example, and it's for the local children's hospital. But, then I ask myself, well, why aren't we doing one for the children's hospital on the coast or the children's hospital in Greenville? And in other words, to some extent, the expectations that are created are ones that have just born out of habit over years. And when you change them, the world doesn't stop. I mean, the fact that Governor Sebelius presided over the Easter egg hunt is a perfect example right there. Like, there was no crisis about that. It was fine. Right.
I wasn't there. I heard she did a very good job.
And I would suspect that if I chose one day, I haven't done this, but if I chose one day to say, you know what, I'm not doing the Easter egg hunt this year for the Columbia Children's Hospital, but this year I want to share the wealth, and I want the Charleston Children's Hospital to come, or the Greenville Children's Hospital, I suspect the world wouldn't stop. Somebody might snicker about it, and you might have a negative something, but, at the end of the day, I think people kind of, they snicker about it and then they move on. And, that to me doesn't rise to the level of crisis. But you still have this fear of like, oh no, what if I'm not there? And, that unfortunately goes with the First Lady territory. Because people will tell you, they'll call you all day long and say, well, you have to do this. And, you only have so many hours a day.
No, I really don't have to do that.
A lot of times I'll say, you know what, or my assistant will say, no, Mrs. Sanford has 4 boys, and there are 4 different sports activities this afternoon, and she's a mother first, so she can't do that unless you want to schedule that Easter egg hunt at noon. And they'll say, oh, well, we never have it at noon. And she'll say, well, you can have it at noon with her, or you can have it at 3 without her. And they'll say, oh, and it's not the end of the world. So a lot of those do or die things, actually, you can work through. They're just reasonable.
Do your kids have any funny habits? And I actually say this. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my 4-year-old was our first kid, and we took her everywhere with us, everywhere. When my husband was running for the state senate, and it got to the point that we put her in our local Halloween parade, huge deal in Independence. She was 11 months old, and we got there early, and it was hot, and she was not happy, and she was not happy for about an hour. And then we looked at her and said, okay, Caroline, come on, let's be in a parade. And I'm not kidding, my 11-month-old kid goes and waved right through the 3-block parade, at which point she melted at the end, and we took her home. But she knew if there was a parade, you wave.
Right.
And in fact, she's actually watched one parade in her life. She doesn't understand that children are not always in parades.
Right.
So we're in the process of probably warping our children badly. Any interesting things about your kids?
Kids are resilient. They knew nothing different than parades.
Yeah.
I mean, they would miss half their soccer games when they were little because we would always have parades or things to go to, and yes, they wave, and sometimes they'd fall asleep in the wagon, and sometimes they'd, instead of throwing one piece of candy, they'd throw the whole bag, and no, we'll put the bag
They're
back
fun.
in.
It's an adventure.
They're fun. Those are fun for little kids. When they get older, they don't like it. When they get older, they tend to, we're dealing with teenagers now who want to just, be anonymous. But kids, they generally, our kids now, the big deal when we moved to Columbia was security agents and guns and where's the gun hiding and can we turn the lights on in the car and can we show our friends? That's what the little boys would do. Now the older boys would be hiding behind the tree, and if you pick me up one more time with that security guy, they would just melt. I mean, they really feel it. But kids are, I don't know. I have lots of kid stories if you want those, but. We do parades still, but we do we try to balance the parades. We tell them in advance if they're going to go to a parade, why we're doing it, what we're doing, and then we always make sure there's something, fun for them afterwards if we're doing political things. We always try and tell them if we expect press to be somewhere for those that are sensitive about press and things like that. We do try to balance our public activities with our time away. But I'll tell you a couple of funny stories. One, when we first moved to Columbia, I remember calling. It's very hot in Columbia in the summer in particular, but this was maybe, spring, so April or March, and it was hot. And I remember calling for dinner, the boys, and the youngest was 4, and he came running around the corner, and he had no shirt on and no shoes, and he had his shorts on. He was soaking wet. And I said, "Where have you been?" And he said, and he pulled his hands out of his pockets, and he had all these pennies, and he said, "We have a big fountain on our property, and the street is open to the public." And he says, "I've been swimming in the fountains." And he said, "I'm rich, and I've been collecting all this money." And I said, "Oh my goodness." But kids will be kids. I said, those were somebody's wishes. He said, "Well, they're mine now." But along another line, we, 2 more stories. One, the same child, the youngest, we've been there a couple months, and there's an elevator in the governor's mansion, and, if you're 4, why walk up the stairs if you can take an elevator? And so he would take this elevator, which was really slow, and one night it was about 7:30, and the elevator got stuck, and he didn't do anything wrong, but it just got stuck, and we tried everything, and we tried turning the power off, I said, "Don't we have a key for this?" And the security guard said, "No, only the fireman does." And I said, "Well, that's pretty stupid." So anyway, the elevator company, we got a hold of them, and the guy was 3 hours away. Well, the child was 4. I said, it is bedtime. So we tried turning the power off and on, and long story short, he just was stuck. And I said, "Are you all right in there?" And he said, "I'm just so bored." And anyway, we get him out of the elevator with the fireman. And I said, "Don't turn the lights on, don't do anything, just please come bring the key, and then get him out of the elevator, please." So, of course, the lights, the sirens, all the firemen. And then about 20 minutes later, after he gets out, we get the call from the local paper, and they said, the largest paper in the state, and they said, "What? Why was the fireman at the governor's mansion?" And I said, "Because the 4-year-old got stuck in the elevator." And they said, "Well, did he do something wrong?" And I said, "No, it broke, and he's out now, and the fireman was the only one that had the key." So, sure enough, the next day at breakfast, front page of the paper, 4-year-old survives elevator scare. There's a picture of Blake with his blankie bear on the whole bed, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" But I used it with our boys, and I said, "Okay, for those of you older boys, the 10-year-old and 9-year-old, who didn't want anything to do with the public or the press," and I said, "For those of you that think," because they are little boys, and you want them to be little boys, I said, "For those of you that think it would be really fun to set off the fire alarm one day, or let off your smoke bombs in the bathroom, or, whatever little boys do," which they do all the time, I said, "just do it at the farm, because there is clearly a direct line from this, house to the state paper, so you might want to think twice." And it's served as a good deterrent for them. But they are, unfortunately, as my husband and I are, they're always on guard. And that's maybe an unfortunate thing about being a child in that political realm. So yes, they wake up, they smile at the parades, they know how to be on, but they also know that they have to behave, or else they'll be written about in ways that other kids aren't. And that's something that, they have to deal with. One last story about the kids. Our 3rd child, who was maybe 9 at the time, his teacher calls me, and I think he was in 3rd grade. And the teacher calls me and says, "Oh, Mrs. Sanford, this is Mr. So-and-so, your son's new teacher, and just want to let you know we've had our first political discussion." And I said, "Well, what did you talk to a 9-year-old about politics? I mean, what did you ask him?" And he told me what he asked him. And I said, what was his response? And he said, he looked at me and he said, "You don't believe what you read in those papers, do you?" And he walked away. And I said, "Good, I think he's got the right answer, and I think you'll get along just fine." But that just showed me I was more worried about what he was going to say to the teacher than he was. And he actually had the right answer and wasn't shaken by what the teacher asked him. And, kids they're very resilient, and they pretty much know their boundaries. So,
one thing that I really look forward to about probably the biggest benefit for our whole family about my husband being in office, so it's not even close to yours. We still have a 9.5 county place that we spend a lot of time traveling around in a car. And we meet people we wouldn't meet otherwise, to be honest. I mean, my kids play with kids from all different areas. I have friends who don't have teeth because they can't afford dental care. And if I was still in my law practice in Washington, D.C., I probably, frankly, would only have friends who had great health insurance who got their teeth cleaned every 6 months. I wouldn't understand that, when we opened the soup kitchen after our flood in southeast Kansas, it wasn't just the flood victims, it was also the people who couldn't afford food who lined up because they had a free meal and how to get them help. And it's also been a great thing for them to get to see. And they're not quite old enough, my 2-year-old certainly isn't, but my 4-year-old's old enough to kind of understand that she gets to see a lot more than her little universe, which is good. And I assume in South Carolina,
they're exposed to lots, yes, which is a great thing.
It's kind of a good view of the world.
We did have our children keep a journal during all their campaigns, and even when they couldn't write, they would draw a picture of something we did every weekend. And we have them in big binders, and it's fun for them to go back because, well, if you were to sit them down and ask them, do you like politics, each one would probably say no, and each one would say, I don't want to be governor. I definitely don't want to be governor. Or I definitely don't want to be congressman. Or, they would swear off of that. But then if you ask them about specific things, or if you ask them about specific places, every single thing they've written about has been a positive thing. They've always found something good in every event they've been taken to and been a part of, and in the life they've shared. So it's a good experience. Overall, we look at it with them as an adventure, if you will, and that we take the parts we like with the parts we don't like, and you make the best of it and get the most out of it you can.
Which is a lot like life anyway.
Right.
So, anyway. Right. I'm going to open it up for questions from you guys. For Mrs. Sanford, we have 2 students with microphones. Who has a question? Okay, Judge. I think Mark is coming around.
I happened to be in New York City when the Elliot Spitzer thing broke. And what I found very surprising is the most common comment was, how in the world could he have his wife up there while he was admitting to all this? What can, a first lady in a situation like that, how do you view what she can do or what she should do?
Again, it's a good question. We were talking about that some at dinner. Again, I think you do what's right for you. And clearly that was the right thing for her, was to go and stand by his side. It clearly wasn't an easy thing to do. And, whether it's the right thing to do, I don't know. Again, I don't know that there are any rules. I think she was showing support for her husband and her marriage. I mean, every marriage has been through, I think, if you have an honest marriage, every marriage, I think, in this world has been through some tough time. Maybe not that tough, I hope, but I know mine hasn't been through one that I would, qualify at that level, certainly. But at some point, I think in every marriage, you come to this, you come to this state where you say, am I sticking with the guy or am I not sticking with the guy? And many marriages don't get through whatever that point is. And if you've gotten through that point, I mean, I look at that, this is my personal opinion about her, but I look at that and think, well, maybe she's just said, this is the guy, and I'm going to stand by him as hard as it is, and we'll work it out later. I don't know. But I don't think there's any right or wrong thing. I think that had she not been standing by his side, everybody would be saying, where was she? Are they getting divorced? And that might be the big article right now. But instead, everybody's saying, what kind of drugs did she take to stand up there next to him? Or, how hard was it? Or did she know? Or, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is in that situation. And I hope we don't have to repeat it in proof what the right or wrong is, and see somebody else's version of it. But my heart goes out to her because it is a tough thing to have to deal with that in the public. And it's going to be a tough thing. They have 3 daughters, and very tough to have those daughters, know what Daddy did and know that everybody in their school and in the world knows what Daddy did. And, not a good situation.
Okay.
I know you were talking about how your kids have to deal with the press and stuff, but also I would assume like your friendships and stuff are also scrutinized by the press. And, how does that affect the fact that all of your life is kind of there for public scrutiny and you have to maybe censor who you spend your time with and who you're friends with and stuff and that type of stuff?
That is a very good question. I have been blessed with some very close friends, most of whom are still on the coast. We moved into Columbia. And now in the years we've been in Columbia, I've slowly made good friends. But it's amazing when you first move there, people come out of the woodwork and they want to do parties for you and things. And you don't really know whether they're honestly, asking you to do a party because they need something out of it or if they really want to get to know you. And you learn to be somewhat suspect, which is maybe not a bad thing. But I've been saddened a little bit to see that quality in my kids, because you want kids to really trust that somebody wants to play with them just because they want to be with them. And our kids will sometimes say things like, nah, I don't really want anybody over. I'll say, two of the boys are gone, let's have some other friends over. When you have 4 boys, I should preface, you don't really need friends over, because you can play any sport 2 versus 2. So, but sometimes we do have friends over, and if they either all have friends and then you have 8 boys, or 2 of them are gone and you have 2 more boys. But we don't always have a lot of friends. But it's amazing that sometimes to me when I say to the boys, why don't you have Billy over? And he'll say, no, I just want to play with my brothers. And then sometimes they'll say to me, which is fine, because they're very close. But sometimes they'll say things like, when I throw out a name, why don't you have Joey over? And I'll say, Joey just likes the house here. I don't really think he wants to come over to play with me. And when that comes from a little kid, you think, oh gosh. And recently, one of our boys he wants to be an actor. So we have like one comedian in our family, and all he wants to do is be an actor. So I've been taking him on my own to Charlotte, North Carolina, where there's this, he tries out and auditions, and he's been, I'll tell you a funny story. He actually, his first commercial was for a local hospital in our area. And the hospital hated my husband because he voted against some certificate of need. We have a certificate of need process where if the process deems you can have another heart hospital, the process says you can. And this process said no. So they got their local legislators to go to the legislature and get the approval outside of the system. And my husband said, you either work with the system or you don't. So he vetoed it. So he vetoed basically the heart hospital right there associated with this medical center. So they're claiming that he was killing people because he was against this heart hospital. Anyway, long story short, my son's first TV commercial was for that hospital. And I was like, oh, they better not find out who he is. And they didn't, except 2 of the cameramen then found out because they said, oh, I know you. I worked on one of your husband's commercials. Anyway, long story short, so it's funny. I've been very encouraging of them, pursuing their own interests on their own quietly without anybody knowing who they are. And anyway, he got a big commercial recently for Toyota, and he had to miss school for 2 days to film it. And I took him to Charlotte, and he filmed it. And when he came back, I was excited for him, just as a mom is excited for a kid. And I said, do you want to tell your class about it? And he said, no. And I said, why? And he said, because they'll think I only got it because of my dad. And I said, okay. And I just left it at that, because he was right. And that's sad to have your kids be so honest and so understanding, frankly, of the way the world works, that, I just said, okay, we won't tell them, but it'll be our secret, and they don't need to know. And, his teacher knew, and she was respectful and didn't say anything, and really that was what I respected. So, it's just part of what you have to deal with. And again, you do the best you can, and you hope that it doesn't hurt them too much, and I don't think it does at the end of the day if they're confident again. And he was confident enough to know that was what they'd think, and that he was okay with them not knowing, and he was just happy he got that part, and that was okay. So, like I said, you do the best you can, and you try to listen to them as much as possible so that you know where their issues are, if they have issues with things like that, so that you aren't, I could easily have said, oh no, let's celebrate, let's tell everybody. But he was happy being quiet, and we just left it like that.
So can you tell us about the commercial, so if we see it, we'll know to look for
It's
him?
Toyota and NASCAR. It's shown on NASCAR stations. If you watch NASCAR, you can see. It's a funny one where they let the little kids drive the cars and crash the cars. They have these like big, giant remote control. Perfect for a freckly 9-year-old kid. So
We'll be watching.
It's a fun commercial.
Another question. Anybody else? Becca.
Mrs. Sanford, my fiancé and I have been together for 3 years, and in that time we've lived in the same town for a month and a half. And I'm wondering how on earth you managed him living in an entirely different city a very long ways away when you had 2 boys and then later when you had 4 boys, because that had to be really tough.
It was hard. to some extent. We had times, particularly when the kids were, like if you had a night when they were all up and had some stomach bug, it was very hard because there was just one of you. The flip side is, I didn't have to set the table for him and make a fancy meal in other words, there are things you can do when you're just 4 little boys and a mom at the beach. A lot of times I'd say, let's just, take our chicken and go and have a picnic on the beach and let's shower outside and go to bed with it. There are lots of different things you could do because you didn't have to cater to a husband coming home every night. So again, like in everything in life, you balance and do what you can. You learn to communicate on the phone better than you maybe would like to. You learn to communicate in different ways. And again, you always learn to try, when he is home, to keep sacred certain times, whether that's a Sunday afternoon or, we tried to always have some time there was no politics and we could just be normal. I will say in support of my husband, he is very able to turn it off, turn the politics off and just be a dad. And he's very good with the kids and makes them feel, so even if he doesn't have a lot of time with them when he's home, they are the only thing that matters when it's, when he gives them his attention, it's undivided. And that's a great thing because I think kids sometimes just need love. And so if I knew that they felt secure that they had that from him and from me and that I could take, make sure that they were healthy and happy and getting to school and doing all those things. And then I make sure to communicate with my husband when I need him, I need him. Now the flip side is he was gone when they were young. And while that's physically challenging for me, little kids don't necessarily know who's changing their diaper. And as they got older, I believe strongly that boys actually need a dad. And so it would be harder, I think, for me now, even though physically they are less needy of my time, it would be harder for me now if Mark wasn't physically in the same house. Because he can look at them in the eye and know that they had a bad day or, really were upset that they lost a tennis match or got a bad grade or the teacher wasn't, you can see that and you can physically feel that better than you can on a telephone. So.
Makes sense. Scotty, do you have a question?
Yes, Mrs. Sanford, I wondered, in a public position such as yours, it must be a touchy item. Do your children go to public or private schools?
It's a very touchy item, and they go to private school, and I have been seriously criticized for that. And as I've said before, I make no apologies. It was the best decision I made, and I never thought twice about it. But, the good Lord's given me one chance to raise these kids. And the public school option we had that we were zoned for was a school, the elementary school was fun, the middle school was not one I would send my children to. And the heads of the district that we're in the governor's mansion, they came and offered me their best public schools, but they don't make that option available to other people. And the head of the neighboring district came by and offered me their best public schools, but they don't make that option available to their other students. And I felt it was unfair for me to take advantage of that if that wasn't available to other people, so I chose to send them to private school. And I chose for a number of reasons. Not only was it a better education, but they could stay together. And they are a wonderful network in and among themselves, the 4 boys. And they have been together now at the same school where they're in their 6th year there. It's a K through 12 school, so they did not need to change schools, which is very good, because once they became comfortable there, they were able to really stay. So when there are good things written about Mark or bad things written about Mark, they can again stick together. It also is an Episcopal school. We take our children to a number of different churches, African-American churches, Baptist churches, you name it, they can write a book about churches in South Carolina. And while we have a very good Bible lesson with them at home on a daily basis, I felt that having a good formal structure with them in a school setting was a good thing for them. So for many personal reasons, Mark left the decision to me. He trusted wholly in my choice. I chose private school. I have been significantly criticized for it in our state, and I make no apologies about it. It was the right thing for our children, and if I'd do it again, I would do it the same thing.
Good question. Okay, sir.
I believe your husband has been mentioned several times as a possible vice presidential candidate for Senator McCain. Has there been any talk as far as your family with the McCain campaign, and has the talk of such a thing raised your own aspirations to higher office for your husband?
No, I personally, to my knowledge, there has not been any talk. To my knowledge, Senator McCain is just starting that process of looking formally into VP candidates, I guess. From my personal standpoint, I'll be supportive of my husband if he were to be chosen by McCain, but I personally would like to take a break from politics for a while and finish the job at hand, which would be raising our children. If he were to be chosen by McCain, to me it would be like a lightning strike. It would be like a 1 in a million thing, and we'd sit and talk about it at the time. I will say one of our kids came home one day and said, this was a while ago, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, came home and he said, "That's it." He said, "I'm voting for Obama." And I said, this would be the family comedian. And I said, "You are?" I said, "Well, first of all, we already voted in South Carolina. Second of all, you're not old enough to vote." And I said, "But tell me why." And he said, "Well, 2 of the kids in my class said that, Dad might be a VP something. And you know what, all I know is I really don't want to move out of the state." And I said, so I said, when I explained to him, this was the extent of basically the family conversation. So when I explained what has to happen, first we have to get through the primaries and McCain had to be nominated. Then he had, to look into all the, possible people in the nation that could be his vice presidential pick. And then he would have to, out of all those choices, pick your dad. And then, maybe he'd investigate about, anyway, one thing after another. Then you go to the general election, and he'd have to actually win. And I said, all these things would have to happen before you'd even have to worry about moving. He said, forget it, and he went out to play. So, I mean, kids are still kids. They worry about things a little bit, and then, once he realized there was about this much chance of it happening, he was perfectly fine, as am I. So that was about it.
Another move. Other questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Just wait 1 minute. I'm sorry. Run, Mark, run.
Tell me about your the quit smoking, eat healthier, and start exercising campaign in Carolina. How did you get that started, or has it been successful?
Success is a relative term, I guess. We're still a very unhealthy state, and I think that what ails South Carolina is the same thing that ails everybody else in our nation. But we tend to eat too much, and too many of us smoke still, and we lead lives that are too sedentary. And that's not anybody's fault. Our generations have changed, our economy's changed, the use of technology has changed, the composition of what we eat has changed, the addition of cheap food has changed, so a lot of things that have come together to make our nation basically less healthy. In South Carolina, we tend to like our food fried. We tend to be a little heavier than the average, so we have a bigger problem. It's not a problem government created, and it's not a problem that government is going to solve. But there are things that we can do, leading by example, and there are other things we can do without creating new government programs. And that's what I've attempted to do, which is to just, first of all, my husband has led by having our entire family bike across the state. We've biked, we've walked, we've run, we've done all sorts of things. And we'll continue to do those. So as a family, we will do those. But I have done some other things that just piggyback on what we're already doing in our state. We already, for example, collect statistics on how many people in a county smoke, how many people eat fruits and vegetables, how many people get the recommended amount of exercise, and then we feed those to the national level. So what we first started was a county-by-county challenge, and we gave a prize to the county that improved their health the most from year to year. And in other words, those statistics were already being accumulated, so we didn't do anything new. We invited the residents of the entire county to come and celebrate, and we looked for programs in that county then that were doing well. We've had awards. We've had lots of different things that reward results-based programs, whether it's a diabetes management program, whether it's an exercise program or a weight loss program. So we've done some things to highlight the things that are working in our state to try and get more people to emulate them. But we just finished something just last month that was a lot of fun that we will probably do again, and that was something very different from what's been done in the past, and it was geared toward children, and we did it in the high schools in South Carolina, and it was a video contest that was open to any middle or high school student in South Carolina, where they could create a TV ad type video, a 30 or 60 seconds, I don't know if any of you have kids or grandkids. They are all using phones or little cameras, and they're all making their own videos. They all want to be movie producers. So, like my kids will film each other in the back seat of the car all day long, laughing, whatever. But so the challenge was to the kids to create a 30 or 60 second video ad about the importance of living a healthy life to reduce the incidence of chronic disease. And they would upload these videos on a national website called ourstage.com. And then the key was they got to pick the winning video. So they voted on the best videos. The students did, and adults. And we had hundreds of thousands of votes on the winning videos. I got sponsors, private sponsors, to give cash prizes to the kids. So we gave out $25,000 in cash to the winning videos. And the schools also got money to buy fitness equipment. So what happened now, the kids had a lot of fun. They'd put their videos up. Some of them created them with classes. Some of them did them on their own. They are really clever, fun kids talking to kids about eating well or not smoking. They also talked about things like alcohol and staying away from alcohol. They talked about sleep deprivation, lots of things that I really didn't expect to see come up on something that was about chronic disease prevention. But what we did now is we just finished it last month, and we ended up with the 10 winning videos. We've now posted on our ETV website, Know It All, which is available to all the teachers in the state, and they can use those 10 winning videos, which would take about 5 minutes for their students to watch. So not a big time commitment on theirs, but they can use the kids' videos to teach other kids to be healthy using their messages. And we've also made those videos available to the TV stations in our state to use as public service announcements. So it was a fun project. It was a little bit different. It really connected. The kids loved it. And I've had a lot of the sponsors and kids asking me to do it again. So I think in the fall we'll probably do it again. But I'm hopeful now that the contest phase is over. I'm hopeful that the teachers will actually use those videos in ways that will continue to educate kids. But there's clearly more we need to do in the whole nationally. We need to do more to incentivize people to live well and cut our healthcare costs on the back end.
Yeah, thank you for the good question. It brings up a good issue. And I think I get the last question. It's the prerogative of having a microphone. What do you want your legacy to be as First Lady? I don't know how you can separate your legacy as First Lady from legacy as a person. And I have continued to believe in my entire life that the greatest, if you're to be so rewarded by the Lord with children, that the greatest thing you can do is to leave good children behind. And so that continues to be my number one goal. As for First Lady, I hope to make a difference in health. I hope to be remembered as somebody who supported my husband and most of all, raised good kids. Well, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. You've come a very long way, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.